Well, good evening. Thank you, Robin, for playing that. Welcome to the Best You discussion. We're glad you're here with us. The music was provided from a good friend of ours, Amy Hendrickson, and that song was entitled I Am. And please look her up, check her out, and you can purchase her new album, Grits and Gold, on Amazon and Spotify. So we have new viewers and new friends. Let me tell you a little bit about Best You. Best You is a company based on the authentic identity theory. We truly believe that everybody, each of you, has some form, some unique seeds of greatness within you, and that is our mission, our duty, our responsibility to help you live your full potential. You know, graveyards are full of unused potential. We want to stop that. So check out our website and learn more about our services, bestyouguru.com. If you missed one of our blogs, you can find it there. Robin and I appreciate all the positive feedback we've been receiving, and we need to hear from you to ensure your questions are answered and your concerns are addressed. Don't wait until someone asks your question. That is not a winning formula. Speak up and ask. You can watch previously recorded Best You discussions on our YouTube channel. Look for the Best You discussion on the YouTube subscription page. Like and subscribe. Find the Best You green and blue diamond. Also, please like our Best You Facebook page. You know, we're here to answer your questions, and if you're watching us live, ask the questions now and Robin will relay them to me. If you have any questions later, you can email them to us by emailing bestyouguru@yahoo.com. Again, bestyouguru@yahoo.com. You know, we enjoy doing what we do, but we need your support. So we ask you to send between $7 and $10 to Venmo at Robin-Shivery, Venmo at Robin-Shivery, or you can use PayPal and just send it using bestyouguru@yahoo.com. And you may ask, well, why only $7 or $10? $7 to $10. First term of the night, because this is a financial therapy series, because the economies of scale. And one of the tenets of the economies of scale is charging less when you have a larger audience. The Best You discussion allows us to deliver our message to a larger audience, and it significantly reduces the cost. So economies of scale is why we only ask for $7 to $10. Now tonight is the third in our financial therapy series. We chose that because we're getting more and more increasingly questions concerning the economy and economics. So we developed a series to help people understand finances and economics. You know, there are only two great pains in life: the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. And fortunately, we have a choice: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of wearing a mask during the COVID crisis is a pain of discipline. Attending a COVID party and dying from that decision is a pain of regret. You choose discipline or regret. The pain we choose often displays our ethics, our values, and our character. It really speaks loudly about who we are and how we view the world. In the area of finances, we experience the pain of discipline or the pain of regret every day. Example, do I purchase that cup of Starbucks? Do I buy that pack of cigarettes? Or do I put those dollars into a money-generating vehicle? The pain of discipline or the pain of regret? Economics is a game everyone plays. Every living human being is involved in this game. If you think you're not playing this game, it just means you're being played. You should understand the rules of this game. It is better to play the game than to be played. Know the scoreboards and what they mean. If you don't know how to read a scoreboard, if you don't know the score, well, how do you know if you're winning? Learn to keep score. So don't allow others to keep your personal score. Example, would you allow your ex to keep score of your finances? I wouldn't. And I wouldn't advise anybody to have anybody keep score except yourself when it comes to your personal finances. It's time you knew how to read the scoreboards, and we're here to help. And the first analogy I'll use is an analogy I use all the time. If you're bowling and you kick a field goal, how many points do you receive? No, I got a better one. Let's say you hit a home run playing football. How many points? Too many people are playing their game of personal finances by rules that are designed by others, for others. This is why we developed this series. We want you to understand the game you've been playing and you will play. Economics is really a set of ideas, or really a set of stories we tell ourselves. Money is a belief system. It is a story we tell ourselves as a people and as a society. An example would be our currency. Fiat money is our currency. It is really based only on trust. Our currency, called fiat money, it is paper. That is all. It is nothing more than paper. The paper itself is worthless, but it represents the trust that people have in the American government, the story of the American government and the American people. The currency represents a story of trust. If you lose that trust, you lose the money. If people lose faith in the United States government, the paper loses any value. It is all about belief. Economics is about stories and beliefs. It's about the story we tell ourselves. Stock markets rise and fall on stories. Supermarket shelves are empty because of stories. Our entire economic system is based on the faith of people and that the faith they have in the stories being told. This discussion is about the scoreboards. When people speak of financial help, when they say they need some money, they need something to get by, they have economic issues, it is not really the money they require. It is knowledge. The story they tell themselves is, I need more money if I just had more money. Oftentimes, more money brings more problems. Generally, you receive the money you deserve based upon your work, your knowledge, and your luck. So focus on gaining more knowledge. Money is merely a tool. I'll repeat that. Money is merely a tool. It is never, ever the answer. If you think it is, you are being played. So let us start with a scoreboard. Everyone, that means you, everyone should know how to read and understand. a personal scoreboard, a personal score that tells the story of you. Your debt to equity ratio. How much money you make is often a very dangerous and misleading gauge on how well you're doing. A big house, a fancy car, a lavish lifestyle really means very little. Compare your debt to your equity. Debt is how much you owe. Equity is a current worth of everything you own or possess. Your debt to equity ratio is calculated by dividing your debt by your equity. D over E. Your debt divided by your equity. So let's assume if you need to get a pencil and paper, do it. Because this is the most critical scorecard you could have to judge how well you're doing. Let's assume you have $400,000 in debt. That's your car, your house, your student loans, credit cards, whatever you owe, everything you owe, that's your debt. Library fines, whatever it is, that's your debt. Now let's assume you have $800,000 in equity. Your house, your cars, your stock, your 401k, your inheritance, your jewelry, your furniture, paintings on the wall, everything that if you sold right now, because that's where we live. We don't live in tomorrow. We don't live in yesterday. We live right now. If you sold them all, that's your equity. How much would you have? So, let's say you had $400,000 in debt and you had $800,000 in equity. Divide 800,000 into 400,000 and you get 0.5. That's your debt to equity ratio. That looks good. That's pretty good. That's a fraction. But now, let's assume you have $800,000 in debt and $400,000 in equity. So you take the $800,000, divide it by the $400,000, and that's 2. 2 is bad. If your debt to equity ratio is a whole number, I suggest you do something, and you do something quickly. The lower the number, the better. The lower the fraction, the better. A whole number means you're underwater. Right now in our country, despite what everybody is touting in the media, in the press, about a great economy, collateralized loan obligations of companies are the highest in history. Household debt is the highest in history. Government debt is the highest in history. Now think about it. If everybody in the country, household debt is higher than before, ever, the government owes more money than ever before, and corporations owe more money than before, why do we feel so good? It's the stories we tell ourselves. So be careful of the story you tell yourself. The debt to equity ratio is used by investors to determine whether to invest in a company and at what level. What is the story your debt to equity ratio says about you? You can ignore it. You can poo-poo it. You can think, I'll get a better job next year. Or you can think that you'll inherit some vast amount of money next week. But you live in today. So today, what is the debt to equity ratio? And what is the story of your economics, of your financial situation? Forget the story you tell yourself because you drive a nice fancy car. Forget the story you tell yourself about the house you live in. What is the truth about your economic health? Your debt to equity ratio speaks loudly. As Jack Nicholson said, can you handle the truth? Now, your economic value is a different indicator, and it is easier to determine, but it's less informative. So we go from your debt to equity ratio to your economic value. So to determine your economic value, all you do is you add up all your liabilities, which is your debts, and then all of your equity, which is, like we said before, the value of your assets, the value if you sold them today. Now add those two together. If the sum is negative, you're underwater. And if you stay there, chances are you'll drown. Avoid having more debt than equity. The reason the debt to equity ratio is better than the economic value is because it tells more about you. Your economic value just determines and tells people and tells you whether you're underwater or on top of water. The debt to equity ratio can determine whether you are swimming or just barely keeping your head above water. Or are you drowning? Or do you really know? Does your story, the truth about you, match your PE ratio? Or have you told yourself a different story? And I would caution you, if you lie to yourself, you're the one you're hurting. Something that is too often misunderstood is our home. You know, most of our life, most of us have said your home is your castle, your home is an asset. Well, people often assume the house is an asset, but that may not be true. Is your house ever really paid for? Remember, you always pay property taxes. And there's always that upkeep. Taxes and upkeep are not assets. So your house equity, the equity you have in the house, is the asset, not the house. If you owe $300,000 on your house and it's worth $280,000, your home is not an asset. It's a liability. Your asset is the equity minus, then your asset is the house equity minus the mortgage and the cost of selling the house. That's your true equity. So the value of your house minus the mortgage minus the cost to sell the house, that's your true equity. So you determine whether your home is really an asset or is it really a liability. You should keep an active watch on your debt to equity ratio all the time. The values of your assets can drop quickly. If you want to learn more, just contact us, send us an email, reach out to us. But if you don't think your value of your assets can drop quickly, a lot of people in 2008 to 2010 thought their homes were assets until they owned a property, until they had a house or a building that they paid, say, $500,000 for, and they found out it was worth half that. So never assume your asset is as stable as it was yesterday. Monitor it frequently. So now we've covered the debt to equity ratio, we've covered your economic health or your value. So let's talk about the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The Dow, we hear all about the Dow, whether it's up or down. But let me tell you what the Dow Jones Industrial Average is. It's a measure of the economic activity. Understand that. The measure of the economic activity of 30 publicly traded companies. That's it, 30. Activity is the key word because it's important that we understand activity is different than value. Now, it's important to monitor the activity of these 30 companies because they represent a strong part of our economy, but they can be misleading, dangerously misleading. Just understand that there is a difference between the living experience, what you and I experience, what we call Main Street. There's a big difference between Main Street and Wall Street. Now, Robin and I have been to Wall Street. We like Wall Street. We like the bull on Wall Street. We like New York City. But we live on Main Street. We don't live on Wall Street. So the Dow is important, but it represents 30 companies. And I don't live on Wall Street. Do you? Third, I want to talk about the Standard & Poor, the S&P index. Now, the Standard & Poor index you hear some about, but it's a measure of 500 publicly traded companies. It's the same as the Dow, except it measures 500 publicly traded companies. It doesn't measure SpaceX, which is Elon Musk's company, because it's a private company. So we have no idea of how SpaceX is doing economically because it's a private company. So these measures are for public companies. So let's talk about the Russell 2000. It's less often heard, but the Russell 2000 measures 2,000 companies. And they select 2,000 of the smallest companies on the Russell 3000 index. That's it. 2,000 publicly traded companies. So between Dow Jones, S&P, and Russell 2000, we're measuring 2,530 companies. Out of how many companies throughout the country? And these are all publicly traded. And the last one we'll talk about, the number you need to know, is NASDAQ. Now, the NASDAQ tracks over 3,000 stocks. But the difference between NASDAQ and the Dow is composed of the type of companies. The Dow only measures or tracks the activities of companies on the New York Stock Exchange. The NASDAQ doesn't, that's irrelevant to them. So the Dow, the NASDAQ, the Russell, the S&P are all economic activity indices. They are indicators of a macro perspective of the economy, the 30,000 feet view of the economy. Your debt to equity ratio is the micro perspective, the story of your personal economy. So if the macro story is doing great, does that always mean the micro story is doing great? Let's give you an example. I'll give you an example of how the scorecards can be misleading. Your debt to equity ratio will not lie to you. But the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, the Russell, they could mislead you because you live your personal experience on Main Street. So for hypothetical purposes only, let's say the average income in the country you live is $100,000 per person. And there's only 10 people in your country. Everyone makes $100,000. So your average income is $100,000. There's 10 people in the country, and each of them earns $100,000 annually. And all of a sudden, you decided that you want to move to a different country. So you check it out, and you discover that the average income there is also $100,000. So you think, because that's how we're trained, we think average income, $100,000 here, and $100,000 where I want to move. So you think their lifestyle's the same thing you're accustomed to, because after all, Their average income is the same as yours currently now. But you're moving there because they have a beautiful coastline. Once you move there, you discover that there are 10 people in that country too, the same as your previous country. But you think you've hit the jackpot because the beautiful coastline is now yours. The same average income, the same population size, but in the new country, one person earns $700,000 per year, and the other 9 earn $33,333 per year. Now, I'm not saying one country is better than the other, but I am telling you that be careful of macro indicators, because the person making $700,000 may not have the same lifestyle of the people making $33,000. So please understand that those people touting a great economy are at 30,000 feet. They're speaking at a macro level. Their lives may be great, but we live on Main Street, and we live understanding the micro numbers, your debt to equity ratio. That's where we live. If you really want to win the economic game, prepare and maintain a personal financial statement. Now, Robin and I, we review our financial statement every month. We sit down and we have a Shivery board meeting, and we analyze it every month. We have a monthly board meeting where we discuss all our life's issues. But we want to know the score, where we stand. We understand what people down the street are doing or what other people in other countries are doing because we hear it on all the media outlets. I can read the Dow Jones Industrial Average just as well as anybody else. I know what a yield curve is and the effect it has. But all of that is irrelevant if my debt to equity ratio is 2 or 3 or 4. It's irrelevant. The person making $700,000 a year doesn't really impact my debt to equity ratio in direct proportion. Now, if you want to know more about how to create a financial statement and how to monitor it and why it's important, just contact us. I will send you a template and we'll go over it together, because I think everybody should have a financial statement. I think everybody should know where they stand. I understand macro level economics, but I live with my budget. Your financial statement is your scorecard. It is your overall economic health. So let me mention something that harms the general and personal economy. Something that oftentimes we ignore because we don't understand it. It's an economic term, so you can write it down as well. But a free and open economy requires everyone to fairly participate. And fairly means based upon what you can afford to pay to participate. Everyone must pay for the services received. If you receive a lot, you should pay a lot. If you receive very little, pay very little. If you wrote, recorded, and performed a song, and people listened, and they listened with enjoyment, would you expect compensation? Would you expect to pay? When you perform your duties at work, do you expect compensation? Not everyone is compensated equally in the society, and I understand that, because not everyone receives the same benefit. That is a given. But too often, economies suffer because the term free rider. We have a free rider problem in all economies. A free rider problem is when people do not pay their fair share. It should be common sense. You should pay your fair share. If you receive a service, you go out to and eat a dinner and you eat the meal, you should pay. But too often times we have free riders. They may have plenty of opportunity and plenty of money to pay, or plenty of ways to compensate for the services they receive, but they don't. And taxes are but one example. Too many free riders that will not pay their fair share of resources taken from a society will destroy an economy. You have too many shoplifters, it will destroy a business. All businesses expect some form of shoplifting. They do. And they put that in their budget. But if you continually go over that budget, that business will go away. The same is of our economy. So be careful of free riders. Free always has a cost. American capitalism requires people to share the cost. Adam Smith never talked about people taking things for free and it serving the economy. So be careful about the free riders around you, not only economically, but emotionally. And emotions, sometimes we call them vampires because they suck the life right out of you. Free riders do the same thing of an economy. So pay fair compensation for the services you receive. Don't shoplift. Pay for things. So I hope you took notes. I hope they were copious because we covered a lot of ground tonight. If you understand the debt to equity ratio, and I promise you, if you will set up a personal financial statement, and we'll help you. I'll guide you through the process. I will email you the template to do it. Several years ago, Robin and I were in a bank, and I showed her the bank's P&L, their financial statement. And Robin could read it, and I was so proud. It may use a little different terms, but it's always a P&L, a financial statement, is always the same format. You can disguise it, you can bluff yourself, etc., etc. But I want you to operate using your financial statement. It saddens me when I see people around me that think they're wealthy, but they're broke and they're struggling, but they got the nice house, the nice car. You shouldn't be that way. Freedom is all what we struggle for and want. Your debt to equity ratio can determine how much freedom you truly have. So as with all our discussions, if you have any questions, please contact me. And Robin, I forgot the questions from last week. So let me jump back to where I should have been earlier.
Get on.
And answer some questions. What type of money is gold? I understand it's more secure than paper money, but what type is it? We mentioned the different types of money in a previous episode. So, personally, I consider gold a universal commodity. It's a commodity because it's used in barter exchanges. You can get, monetary fiat money for it, but I consider it a commodity. In certain economic times, it is more valuable than paper money. And the reason being is very few people throughout history have ever lost their trust, their stories they tell themselves about gold. Gold has held its value throughout history, whereas paper money, not so much. Now, the problem with gold is this. It's maintained its value. It doesn't rise and fall as much as some investments, and some people put too much faith in it. When in 1972, I think it was Richard Nixon took us off of the gold standard, which some people agreed with and some people did not. But gold holds its value. Now, I personally don't ask anybody to invest in it, but I do consider it a barter type of money because its value is not determined by one government. Gold transcends the trust in a certain or a particular government. If that answered, I greatly appreciate it. With a question, if it didn't answer, please email me and let me know. I can't seem to ever get ahead. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is the question was, I can't seem to get ahead, and I'd ask, ahead of what? What are you trying to get ahead of? If you can answer that, then we can go further, but The way to get ahead is clearly define where you're going. What are your goals? Too often times in life, we try to get ahead by other people's standards, by other people's goals. You know, we talked in a previous episode about what rich is. Well, if you're trying to get ahead based upon someone else's perception of what ahead is, you're always going to be behind. Determine what your goals are and create a path to get there. What do you want? And then create a path to get there. That's why Best You was formed. Best You was formed to help people get to where they should be going. So if you can clearly define your goals, develop the path to get there, then you eliminate those things that have been preventing you. The hard part is overcoming the socialization process that got you to this point where you think you're not ahead. So the first question is, ahead of what? I'm not happy with who I am. That's not really a question, it's a statement. I'm not happy with who I am. Do you know who you are? Maybe you're not happy with the illusion of who society or the social institutions told you you were. Maybe that's not who you're happy with. Maybe you don't really know who you are, because I truly, firmly believe that if you knew who you were and truly absorbed and had that feeling and knowledge of who you are, you'd be happy. I know very few people who know themselves. In fact, I don't know anybody who really knows themselves who are unhappy. So if you're not happy with who you are, I would suggest you don't know who you are. And we can help you find who you are. Don't accept society's version of who you are. You've been socialized, sterilized, and standardized to fit into a format that fits the purpose of the institutions that told you who to be. That's why you're unhappy. You're not unhappy with you. You're unhappy with the version they told you to be. When you live as you, happiness will come. So, get back with me, but I challenge you to think about who you really are, because I think you're very happy with you if you could find you. What you're not happy with is living a life as they told you who to be. The last question, how does income inequality hurt me or my family? I'm doing just fine. There's a couple things. Income inequality will eventually harm a country, which will eventually harm you, unless you're in the upper 1% in the economy, income-wise. If you have, if you're Elon Musk, probably not. If you're Warren Buffett, probably not. But how it hurts you is this. How many cars I'll give just a quick example, the 1% or the top 10% or the top 0.5% can only buy a certain amount of cars, of vehicles, of homes. The rest of us can buy much more. And what keeps American capitalism going is a strong middle class. American capitalism, as defined by Adam Smith, is not funded by the poor. It is not funded by the rich. It is funded by the middle class. And the less power given to the middle class, to the working class, to the majority of us, the less of a dynamic economy we have, because we are the purchasers. You could take $1 million away from Warren Buffett and put it into taxes, and Warren wouldn't mind at all. He would not notice the difference. He said that. He's publicly stated that. The problem is when you damage the middle class, you damage American capitalism. And American capitalism is the economic system that has funded our freedom for a couple of 100 years. So when you say, yeah, you're doing fine, well, are you sure? I would challenge your debt to equity ratio. And then I would look around, what else are you funding? Because other people aren't paying their fair share by the free riders. And if the income hasn't improved in the last 40 years for the middle class Americans, who is paying for the repair of the roads? Oh, I'm sorry. Our country is ranked, what, 23rd in the health of the highway system? What about who's paying for our education? Oh, wait a minute. We rank pretty low in our children's education. And then 1 in 4 of our children live below the poverty level. So when you say it hasn't harmed you because you're doing fine, I would maintain it is harming you. Because who is fixing the roads? Nobody. Who's educating our children? We're falling behind. And 1 in 4 of the children, of American children, live below the poverty level. So I ask you, if you're doing fine, are you sure? And for how long? So again, let me recap our discussion tonight. If you want to win, know the score. Create a financial statement. Know your debt to equity ratio. If you want to win, you got to know the score. Your debt to equity ratio tells you if you're swimming or if you're drowning. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, the Russell 2000 are other people's scorecards of a macro economy. Number 4, don't be a free rider. And number 5, prepare and review a personal financial statement. It's your scorecard. So mark your calendar, because our next Best You discussion will be Thursday, July 30th at 7 p.m. That's Mountain Time, because that's where we live. So thank you for joining us, and my hope for you is that you receive everything you deserve.